Thank you for watching this video. This is the second installment of the Echoes of Elysium saga. For the first chapter, please follow the link in the description below. Now on to the story. Captain Vance took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She couldn't let her own doubts cripple her. She had to remain strong for her crew. With a final surge of determination, she fired the engines, sending the ship careening out of harm's way. The enemy ship gave chase, relentless in its pursuit. Captain Vance's hands flew across the controls, deftly evading enemy fire while trying to come up with a plan. As they raced through the stars, Captain Vance found herself lost in thought. What if the message really was a hoax? What if it was all for nothing? The stakes had never been higher, and the pressure was beginning to feel unbearable. She couldn't help but wonder if she was leading her crew astray, if she was making the wrong choices. She glanced over at First Mate Eve again, her resolve wavering. Perhaps Eve was right. Maybe she should just give up, admit defeat, and return to the safety of port. But something inside her wouldn't let her. There was a spark, a flame that burned brightly, refusing to be extinguished. It was the same flame that had driven her forward since the day she'd taken command, the same flame that had kept her going through all the hardship and loss. The enemy ship drew closer, its weapons locking onto their target. Captain Vance gripped the controls tightly, her knuckles white. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She knew that whatever decision she made now would have consequences, not just for her crew, but for the entire galaxy. As they raced through space, the crew went about their duties, each member aware of the tension that hung in the air. Some of them gave Captain Vance sympathetic glances, while others averted their eyes, unwilling to acknowledge the growing conflict. The enemy ship continued to close in, its weapon systems powering up, its intentions clear. Captain Vance knew that she couldn't keep putting off the inevitable any longer. She had to confront her doubts, face her fears, and decide once and for all if she was truly committed to their mission. She turned to First Mate Eve, her expression grim but determined. "I need your honest opinion, Eve. Do you believe in this message? Do you believe that we can save the galaxy?" Eve looked back at her, her eyes filled with unshakable faith. "Captain, I believe in you. I believe that we were brought together for a reason, and that reason is to see this through, no matter what the cost." Her words were like a balm to Captain Vance's soul, giving her the strength she needed to make her decision. With renewed resolve, Captain Vance turned back to the controls, her hands flying across the panel as she devised a daring plan to outmaneuver and destroy the enemy ship. The crew watched on in awe, their trust in their captain palpable. They knew that they were in this together, that they would fight and die for one another if necessary. As they closed in on the enemy vessel, Captain Vance signaled for Eve to take the helm. The first mate nodded solemnly, her hands moving fluidly across the controls as she guided the ship into position. The enemy ship was caught off guard, its weapon systems unable to keep up with their sudden change of course. Captain Vance fired a barrage of turret fire, scoring a direct hit on the enemy's engines, disabling it. With the enemy ship now crippled, Captain Vance ordered Eve to stand down and took control once more. She hailed the enemy vessel, her voice steady and commanding. "This is Captain Vance of the Starbound. Surrender your ship and we'll spare your lives. Refuse, and you'll be destroyed." The enemy captain's face appeared on the view screen, his expression a mixture of anger and desperation. He sneered, "You're too late, Vance. The message was a ruse. Our true objective was to destroy your ship and all aboard her." Captain Vance glanced at Eve, her eyes narrowing. "Then it seems we have no choice." With a grim determination, she gave the order to fire the ship's main cannon at the crippled enemy vessel. The blast engulfed the enemy ship, reducing it to a brilliant ball of fire that faded slowly into the void. As the last vestiges of the enemy ship disappeared, Captain Vance turned to Eve, her face etched with exhaustion and relief. "Thank you, Eve. You've been a loyal and trusted friend throughout this journey. I couldn't have done it without you." Eve smiled warmly, her eyes shining with tears. "Thank you, Captain. It's been an honor serving with you." Together, they turned back to the helm, their hands once again moving in perfect harmony as they guided the ship through the treacherous asteroid field. The crew, sensing the tension that had been released, relaxed into their stations with renewed focus and determination. As they emerged from the other side of the asteroid belt, they caught sight of the distant beacon, its light growing brighter with each passing moment. The crew erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the ship. They had made it. They had survived the worst of their journey and were now just a short hop away from delivering the message that could save the galaxy. Captain Vance stepped away from the helm, her heart pounding with a mixture of triumph and relief. She turned to face the crew, raising her voice above the din. "All right, everyone. We did it. We're almost there. But we can't let our guard down yet. The stakes are higher than ever. Let's buckle down and make sure we deliver this message with precision and care." Her words seemed to calm the crew, and they settled back into their stations with renewed purpose. The ship continued its steady approach to the beacon, and as they drew nearer, the crew began to prepare for their final mission. They pored over the data stored on the artifact, cross-referencing it with their own records and consulting with experts across the galaxy. They spent hours debating the finer points of the message's meaning and implications, arguing passionately about the best course of action. As they neared the beacon, the crew's anticipation reached a fever pitch. Captain Vance, however, could not shake the feeling that something was amiss. She found herself glancing over her shoulder, constantly checking the sensors for any sign of pursuit. She trusted her crew, but she couldn't help but wonder if they had all been as skeptical as she had been about the message's authenticity. The debate raged on, fueled by passionate arguments on both sides. Some believed that the artifact was a genuine relic from a long-lost civilization, while others insisted that it was nothing more than a hoax, a devious ploy designed to manipulate them into taking a particular course of action. The tension in the air was palpable, and Captain Vance knew that she had to confront the issue head-on. She called a meeting of her closest advisors, including Zan, the ship's AI. "We need to discuss the possibility that the artifact might not be what it appears to be," she began. "I want each of you to consider the evidence objectively and tell me what you think." Zan, who had been observing the crew with his customary detachment, spoke first. "Captain, it is certainly possible that the message has been altered or fabricated. However, it is also possible that it is genuine. The only way to be certain is to verify the information with independent sources." The others nodded in agreement, but the doubt lingered in the air. Captain Vance knew that she had to make a decision soon, or the crew's infighting would tear them apart. She took a deep breath and made her choice. "All right, everyone. We're going to proceed with caution. We'll contact the authorities and double-check the message's authenticity before taking any action." The relief was palpable, but it was tempered by uncertainty. They had all been so focused on the message that they had forgotten the importance of trust and teamwork. Captain Vance vowed to keep the crew together, no matter what challenges lay ahead. As they prepared to rendezvous with the authorities, Zen volunteered to stay behind and monitor their communications for any signs of foul play. Captain Vance knew she could trust the AI, but the thought of leaving him behind still weighed heavily on her. She hoped that once the message was verified, they could put all of these doubts to rest and focus on the mission at hand. The journey to the authorities seemed to take an eternity, and Captain Vance found herself checking the sensors and double-checking the ship's systems constantly. When they finally arrived, the crew was escorted to a secure facility where they were briefed on the procedures for verifying the message's authenticity. The process took weeks, and every day was fraught with tension as they waited for word on the results. Finally, the day came. The crew was summoned to a meeting room, their hearts racing with anticipation. The authorities presented their findings. The message was indeed genuine, and it corroborated with data from other sources across the galaxy. The crew of the SS Starbound was given the honor of delivering the news to the leaders of the various races. As they prepared to depart once more, Captain Vance couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and responsibility. They were truly the only ones who could save the galaxy. The journey back to their respective homeworlds was a somber one. The crew members knew that the weight of their mission lay heavily upon them and that every decision they made would have far-reaching consequences. Captain Vance held a series of private meetings with each member of the crew, listening to their concerns and offering words of encouragement. She knew that they would all have to work together to make sure their message was heard and understood by the leaders of their races. As they neared their destination, Captain Vance could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down upon her. She had never been more certain of anything in her life, but the stakes were higher than ever before. The crew of the Starbound had been chosen for this mission because of their unwavering trust in one another, and she intended to keep it that way. She scheduled a final briefing where each member of the crew had one last chance to voice any concerns or doubts. After much discussion and debate, they agreed to present their findings to the leaders of their respective races simultaneously, ensuring that no one could claim they had been left out of the loop. The day finally arrived, and Captain Vance stood before the leaders of her race, her heart pounding in her chest. She had rehearsed her speech 100 times, but nothing could prepare her for the nerves that coursed through her veins as she took a deep breath and began to speak. Esteemed leaders, it is with the heaviest of hearts that I stand before you today. We have received confirmation that our worst fears have come true. The artifact, known as the Keystone, has indeed fallen into the hands of a malevolent force. They intend to use its power to enslave our galaxy and wreak untold devastation upon us all. The room fell silent as Captain Vance continued. However, there is still hope. The message we have brought you today contains the coordinates of a hidden cache where the Keystone was hidden millennia ago. If we act swiftly and together, we can retrieve the artifact and use it to restore balance to the galaxy. But we must move now, before it is too late. Captain Vance paused, her gaze sweeping over the assembled leaders. Some looked shocked, others angry, and still others disbelieving. But there were a few who met her gaze steadily, understanding dawning in their eyes. They knew the truth, and they knew what had to be done. Together, they would save their galaxy from certain doom. With a deep breath, Captain Vance continued. I understand that this news is difficult to accept, but I urge you to trust us. We have seen the evidence with our own eyes, and we have checked and rechecked every detail. The fate of our galaxy rests in our hands. I implore you to set aside your differences and work together to form a united front against this threat. The coordinates of the cache are contained in the message we have brought you, and they are encrypted with the strongest security measures we could devise. Only those who are trusted with the knowledge of the Keystone's location should have access to the coordinates. Captain Vance stepped aside, making way for the representatives of the other races. They each took their turn addressing the assembly, their words echoing hers. They spoke of the dire consequences that would befall their people if they failed, and of the responsibility that lay upon their shoulders to protect their homes. The room grew quiet as the weight of their words settled over the assembled leaders. Finally, the representatives finished speaking. They looked to the leaders of Captain Vance's race, waiting for their response. The room was tense, the air thick with anticipation and fear. Captain Vance took a deep breath, her heart racing. She knew that this moment would determine the fate of not only her people, but of the entire galaxy. With all the courage she could muster, she addressed the assembly once more. We understand that this is a difficult decision and that you will need time to consider your next steps. In the meantime, we urge you to keep this information confidential. The future of our galaxy hangs in the balance, and we cannot afford to let the wrong hands obtain the coordinates of the cache. We will wait for your reply, and we will stand by you, ready to aid you in whatever way we can. Together, we can save our home. We have faith in you." The leaders of each race filed out of the room, each discussing the news amongst themselves in hushed tones. Captain Vance remained behind, her heart still racing as she waited for the other representatives to join her. Finally, they were all alone in the room. "Well," said one of the other captains, breaking the silence, "that went about as well as could be expected, I suppose." Captain Vance nodded, her expression grave. "Indeed. Now the real work begins. We must prepare our ships and our crews for the mission ahead. There is no time to waste." The other captains nodded in agreement, and they began to discuss the logistics of the operation. They would need to gather their most trusted officers, coordinate their efforts, and prepare for any contingencies. They also had to consider how they would respond if any of the other races decided not to participate or betrayed their trust. As they worked, Captain Vance felt a sense of purpose and determination welling up inside her. She knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but she also knew that they had no choice. The fate of their galaxy depended on them. Together, they would find the Keystone, restore balance, and ensure a bright future for all who called this place home. Their discussions ranged from the tactical to the philosophical as they grappled with the weight of the responsibility they had been given. They debated the best way to approach the other races, how to gain their trust, and how to handle those who might not be willing to cooperate. They also considered the moral implications of their actions, the potential consequences of their success, and the challenges that would inevitably arise along the way. As time passed, Captain Vance found herself growing more and more attached to these individuals who had once been her enemies. They were all fighting for the same cause, and in the end, that was all that mattered. She realized that in a different time, under different circumstances, they might have been friends. Perhaps, if they survived this ordeal, they could find a way to build a new future together, one based on understanding and mutual respect. Finally, they reached a consensus. They would meet with the other races one last time to present a united front and convince them of the urgency of their mission. If that failed, they would proceed without them, knowing that they had done all they could to save their home. With a sense of determination and resolve, Captain Vance and her companions prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They emerged from the conference room, their faces set in grim determination. Captain Vance surveyed the assembled leaders one last time, taking in their expressions of hope, fear, and uncertainty. She took a deep breath, steeled herself, and stepped forward. "We have discussed the matter at hand extensively, and we have come to a decision. We must act, and we must act now. The fate of our galaxy hangs in the balance. We urge you to join us in this fight against the darkness. Together, we can save our home. But if you choose not to, know that we will proceed without you, for we have no choice." The other captains nodded in agreement, their eyes never leaving the leaders they were addressing. The silence that followed was heavy with tension, each moment feeling like an eternity as they waited for a response. Finally, one of the leaders broke the silence. "You have our support, Captain Vance. We will stand beside you until the end." Captain Vance felt a surge of relief and gratitude wash over her. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "We will need all the help we can get. Now, let us prepare our ships and our crews for the journey ahead. The sooner we depart, the better our chances of success." The other captains nodded once more, and they began to disperse, each returning to their respective vessels to begin the arduous task of readying their forces for battle. Captain Vance lingered for a moment, watching them go. She knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but she also knew that they had no choice. They had to try. They had to save their home. As she turned and walked back toward her ship, the weight of responsibility bearing down on her shoulders, she couldn't help but wonder if they would succeed. Would they find the Keystone in time? Would they be able to stop the darkness from consuming them all? Despite her doubts, she refused to give in to despair. She had faith in her crew, and she had faith in the others who had chosen to stand beside her. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would save their galaxy. Their ships gathered in a massive, awe-inspiring fleet, the combined might of the galaxy's civilizations ready to face the darkness head-on. Captain Vance stood on the bridge of her vessel, the Starbound, her gaze sweeping across the array of alien vessels and their crews. Each ship hummed with energy, a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of those who had designed and built them. The air was thick with anticipation and determination, as if the very fabric of space itself was vibrating in anticipation of the battle to come. As they waited for the signal to depart, Captain Vance found herself thinking of her crew, the men and women who had volunteered to join her on this desperate mission. They were all brave, skilled, and dedicated to the cause. Some were friends, others were strangers, but they had all come together in this time of need. She knew that not all of them would return, but she also knew that their sacrifice would not be in vain. The signal finally came, and with a thunderous roar, the fleet leapt into the void, streaking across the stars toward the location of the ancient artifact that might hold the key to their salvation. Captain Vance stood at the forefront of the bridge, her hands clasped tightly behind her back, her eyes fixed on the viewport as the stars streaked past in a dizzying display of celestial majesty. Weeks turned into months, and still they flew, their ships dancing through the emptiness between the stars. They encountered strange new worlds, encountered civilizations both ancient and advanced, and even fought off attacks from rogue factions that sought to delay or derail their mission. But Captain Vance and her crew persevered, their resolve only strengthening with each passing day. And then, at long last, they received word that they were close. The artifact they sought, the fabled Keystone, had been found. Captain Vance's heart soared with hope as she received the news. The end of their journey was finally within reach, but she knew that the real battle was still to come. The Keystone was heavily guarded, and they would have to fight their way through legions of enemies to reach it. She called her crew together, her voice steady and resolute. "Men and women of the Starbound, we have reached the end of our journey. The Keystone lies before us, waiting to be claimed. But we must not underestimate the forces that stand between us and our goal. Our enemy is cunning and powerful, and they will stop at nothing to keep the Keystone from falling into our hands. We must be prepared for a fight unlike any we have faced before." The crew nodded solemnly, their faces etched with determination and grim resolve. Captain Vance continued, her voice growing more intense. "I know that many of you have lost friends and loved ones along the way. I know that the road ahead will be difficult and fraught with danger. But I also know that we are not alone. We are a part of something greater than ourselves. We are the defenders of our home, and we will not fail. We will not rest until the light of freedom and hope shines once more upon our galaxy." As she spoke, the crew erupted into a thunderous cheer, their voices echoing through the ship and ringing with a sense of purpose and unity. Captain Vance smiled, proud of her crew and grateful for their unwavering loyalty. Together, they would face the darkness, and they would emerge victorious. Check back soon for the part 3 of this sci-fi adventure. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it.